Good morning, Husker fans, and welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. And we're here on the Thursday morning for another episode of the podcast. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me, as always, is Danny Gillette. And Danny, how you doing this morning after late night watching some Big Ten baseball?
Good. And on top of the late night yesterday watching Big Ten baseball, I had a late night on Tuesday watching the Celtics win in overtime. So it's been a lot of late nights here, but it's fun. It's a fun time of year, and the baseball team redeemed themselves last night, so I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, it's definitely good to see that the Huskers aren't going home after two games. They didn't go two in a barbecue, so that's a good thing. We'll talk about that. Friday night football game for the Huskers and some recruiting stuff. Before we get into it, please make sure that you guys hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Really helps us out. We really appreciate that. So first topic, we'll get into the baseball game here in a second, but the Huskers, another Friday night, this time at home. My first reaction, I don't love the Friday night games. I haven't loved them the last 2 years. They played at Rutgers 2 years ago, played at Illinois last year, but they did win both of those games. So it is going to be a little different being at home. It's supposed to be the 400th consecutive sellout. But yeah, what are your thoughts on another Friday night football game for Nebraska this year?
I love it because it frees up my weekend, especially in the fall. I'm so busy, like between the Patriots and the and Nebraska Saturday and Sunday. But besides that, it's just the atmosphere is going to be absolutely electric. And anytime I can get a night game, we're already going to have the night game against Colorado 2 weeks prior to that. And I understand that fans are a little upset because of travel considerations, and rightly so. But at the same time, I mean, you look back at some of our night game history. The first game that came to mind for me was the 2019 Illinois game, and what a thriller that was. I actually went back and watched some highlights of it a couple of weeks ago, and man, that was a fun game. I remember actually chatting with you. It was a long game, but Nebraska was able to pull it out. So we have a good history with night games in recent memory. Rutgers, the pandemic season, and then just last year against Illinois. So I get the upsetment due to the travel considerations and even taking away a little bit from high school football, but at the same time, it's the perfect backdrop for the 400th consecutive sellout. And night games Memorial is always rocking, and it's going to be another great atmosphere against a tough Illinois team. They always play Nebraska tough, and so I'm excited. And of course, that's easy for me to say because I'll be watching it at home, and I know you probably have stuff to cover by then on Friday night. So, I mean, I'm excited though. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I always love Memorial Night games. The fans show out. The student section's always loud, and hopefully by that point we'll have, let's see, two wins. I think by that point. It's 2 or 3. 3.
Yeah, I think that's week 4. I'm
3.
saying that off the top of my head, though.
Yeah,
So
because we
because
got
that's the
UTEP, Colorado,
yeah.
and one more.
Gosh, I'm blanking on who our third.
I
Is
am
it
too.
Louisiana Tech or something? I'm just totally blanking on it.
That was last. I don't know. Do you play them again? Hold on.
I know it's some team that we should beat, so whatever. But I've obviously already marked it down in my head as a win, so I'm not even.
Yeah.
So if they end up losing to this team that I can't even remember, that's going to really piss me off down the road. Not that
Yeah.
they will.
Yeah, exactly. The fan in me has already marked off the first 6 games in my head. I know I shouldn't do that, but quite honestly, the schedule doesn't start for me until October 26th against Ohio State. And the game in between Colorado and Illinois is Northern Iowa, also at Memorial. Okay. That's the other thing. We have some, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 straight games at home to start the season. So
yeah, I think it's like 6 of the first 7 or something, isn't it?
Let's see. So we have UTEP at home, Colorado at home, Northern Iowa at home, Illinois at home, Purdue and West Lafayette, Rutgers at home, and then you have Indiana on the road, Ohio State and Columbus, UCLA at home, USC in LA. You have Wisconsin at home, and then Iowa in Iowa. So honestly, if you're a season ticket holder, all scheduling issues aside, you're getting your money's worth this year.
Yeah, so man, those last 6 games sure hit different than the first 6 games. I'll tell you that
Yeah,
much, especially
yeah,
looking at I think Indiana's going to surprise some people. I think that their coach Kurt Siganetti or whatever the heck his name is, I think he's pretty good and he's actually got a pretty good haul in the transfer portal. So
yeah.
like I know that in that so I'm not thinking that's going to be as easy a win, especially on the road as people think. And then you got UCLA coming here, USC, Wisconsin, Iowa, Ohio State. So yeah, that's got to rack up some wins early, but that's the thing. The Big Ten's going to be tough. We've talked about that before. You got to be able to win. You got to be able to beat good teams. So not necessarily worried about that, but I don't. Yeah, I don't love the Friday night games. I guess part of it is selfish. The schedule makers
Yeah.
in football haven't done me any favors this year because I cover high school football on Friday nights for my day job, and so the Green Bay Packers, they decided to put them, my favorite team, on Friday night in Brazil against the Eagles, and
That
now
I don't understand for the life of me. I don't know.
yeah, I think that's I honestly I really hate how the NFL's like we're going to play a game every day of the week. Like that's like their mission is they're like we want to play Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, like the Christmas game on Wednesday. Like I hate it. Just I also hate that they're going to have these games on Netflix. I mean, I already have Netflix, so it's not that big a deal, but
No, I
like
hate it too. They're just
like
making it harder to watch games. Like I was looking at the Patriots schedule, and I think the only game, like the only weird game I'll say, is a game in London against the Jaguars in November at like 9:30 in the morning. But um, it is pretty weird. And now I'm hearing they're discussing about maybe expanding games to Australia. And I don't know. I'm gonna have to
yeah.
wake up at 2 a.m. to cover a Patriots game in Australia against probably, I don't know, the Cleveland Browns. Like, does that get the people going? It doesn't get me going at 2 a.m. So I don't know.
What's really annoying to me is I have to watch the Huskers while I'm trying to do my other job. So, I'll make it work. I'll be streaming it on my phone and the Packers game too. My bosses know that. They probably don't, but they should. So that's why I
Now
have
they
two
do.
phones. That's why I have two phones. So I record the game. I literally record the action, because I take video. So I record video with one phone while I watch the other phone. There's 40 seconds between plays. It's totally fine. Football is the easiest sport to watch while you're watching another sport. If you can get, as long as like the plays aren't synced up to snap at the exact right time, I'll watch the high school play, then I'll watch the thing on my phone. So, you just got to make sure that the battery's charged, you got your good internet access. And so, that works out, but it is a pain. It is a pain though. I wish I could, sit at home and watch the game, but it's all right. Outside of that, I mean, I think it's good for Nebraska. I mean, anytime you can play on a national stage and get a little bit more recognition, that's probably what Matt Rule I think would say. It's another opportunity for us to show the country that we're on our way back. And they've won the last 2 years on Friday night. So the thing about it is Nebraska is a big brand, and you have like Michigan and Ohio State, like the bigger. They don't want to play on Friday night. Michigan's pretty much said that they won't, and I'm not sure if the Big Ten can really make them. So when you have a team like Nebraska, that's like we'll play anytime, we'll play any night game. That's why they get some of these extra games. So there's positives and negatives, I guess, with the high school stuff. I mean, I understand that. That's a bummer for people. Like if their kid plays high school football and they're a
Yeah.
season ticket holder, like I totally understand that. But not everybody's going to be happy with the schedule. So it is what it is, and people can sell their tickets. I mean, I understand that's an inconvenience and all that, but I don't think it's a terrible thing overall. And like I said, I don't love all these different Thursday night and Monday night and
Right.
Tuesday night,
No, I don't either.
but that's just how we live. We live in that they're trying to make as much TV money as possible. And at the end of the day, Nebraska got a pretty big check for its Big Ten revenue the other day. So, overall, I don't think it's a bad thing.
No, I'm just looking at the schedule, and we kind of chalk up, the first half of the schedule as wins. Another, difficult game could be Purdue and West Lafayette. You just never know because Purdue has
Yeah.
always played. Last time played, I remember Aiden O'Connell and the running back whose name he just,
Devin Mockabee.
and then the guy Charlie Jones, the wide receiver, also tore us up.
He tore us
He's with
up.
the
Yeah.
Bengals now, I think. So, I mean, I think that's going to be a good one. Purdue, like for that game, Purdue's always a good atmosphere. Even Rutgers is going to be tough. So it's going to be a fun schedule this year, and more games under the lights is always fun.
That stretch, I think that's going to define the season. I mean, yeah, beating Colorado is going to be the big thing. That's why I think that game's so important, just to get off to a positive start and just to get some belief in this team that they're going to win those types of games. Those 50-50 type games. But
Mm,
you play at Indiana, at Ohio State, home against UCLA, at USC. That I mean, then you play Wisconsin and Iowa too. But I think that 4-game stretch right there is really, if Nebraska can win at least 2 of those games, just go 2-2, and they win. If they could win the first 6 or whatever. I'm not saying that's going to be easy, but if they could do it and they could win those last 2, and then all of a sudden, or go 2-2 in that 4-game stretch, all of a sudden you're going into Wisconsin and Iowa sitting at 8-2. I mean, I would definitely take that. I know every Nebraska fan in existence would take that, because we'd be in the playoff hunt. We'd have a bowl game clinched, and we'd get to, play 2 of our biggest rivals with a heck of a lot on the line. So that would be very fun, but, it's not going to be easy, especially, you got to take care of business against Colorado and Purdue and win those home games. Those are all winnable games, and I think it's time Nebraska starts taking care of those as a program. But, we'll see. It's not going to be. I know Dylan Raiola looked great in the spring, but it's not going to be easy trotting him out there in the Big Ten, and maybe it will be. I hope it is. I hope he looks the exact same, and maybe he will. But I do think that there's going to be, some bumps along the way. I mean, I think that it would be naive not to expect that with the
he's a freshman. Yeah.
So, but I also look back to last year, and I think about how close this, because that's the other thing is, yes, we have a freshman quarterback. I'll say the most talented freshman we probably ever had, since the days of like Tommy Frazier.
I would agree, yeah.
But you look at the team we had last year, and we had the worst quarterback situation, or the worst quarterback production, I guess. With all the turnovers and all that stuff, and when we still were in basically every game except the Oklahoma game, and you could say the Colorado game too. But if we don't shoot ourselves in the foot constantly, that's a competitive game in the fourth quarter.
Oklahoma? Which game do you mean last year? You said Oklahoma.
Not Oklahoma, sorry. Let's see. The Michigan game is the one I was thinking of. Michigan,
okay.
And I knew we got blew out at home. I'm thinking 2022, but yeah. So the Michigan game,
it all blends in after so many years.
So the Michigan game, and then so really the Michigan game was the only game we weren't competitive, and they were the national champions. So, you look at that, every other game we had an opportunity to win, and our quarterback play was absolutely terrible in terms of the turnovers. And so if like I said, if Dylan Raiola can just like throw like 10 interceptions, like one turnover a game, like even that, which I think he's a lot better than that, that would probably be enough to get us like 7-8 wins, as long as everything else, sticks as it did last year. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I think that's not an unrealistic expectation. When you look at just the way he can make reads quickly, the way he throws the football and how it kind of floats to the receiver, but not in the lame duck throw type of way, more like the touch type of way. I think that lines up for, a good throwing pattern and a good throwing motion. And then, and we say this every year, but it's going to be, up to the offensive line and, seeing how they do this season in order to, give him protection and the things that they need, Raiola needs, to kind of succeed. And, Nebraska's been doing a good job recruiting, in terms of offensive linemen, and they have, several official visitors, both on the offensive and defensive side of the football. But one that was, kind of mentioned yesterday was SJ Altafuli, and he's a 4-star lineman from Bishop Gorman. He's rated, just above 90 overall per the On3, numerical rankings, whatever you want to call them. And so they're still looking for offensive linemen, even with, the nice building blocks that they have on campus already. And I'm excited to see that they're bringing him in for an official visit, because that means, they're making him a priority type of player. And, shout out to Donovan Raiola for really recruiting the position hard over these last couple cycles, not even just this calendar year, but for me, it went back to the summer of, 2023 when, we got Landon Davidson and, Preston Tamua and, guys like that. He kind of was able to really get some key recruits to commit. And, it started actually in the spring with Gibson Pyle, but you've seen this cycle, how effective he's been in, selling the program and, selling the message of what Nebraska wants to do here. And I'm hoping, with the official visit for Altafuli that he can, seal another one, because as you recall, and I know we've talked about this last summer was big for Nebraska. I don't think it's going to be as big this year, but I do expect maybe 4 or 5 commitments by the time July rolls around.
Yeah, and that July or the Olaf Atuli's coming June 21st, and that's going to be a huge weekend for the Huskers. They have 16 recruits that are scheduled to take official visits this weekend or that weekend. And according to the On3 industry rankings, they've got 7 of those guys are 4 stars. And they also have, which I think is interesting, 4 of their verbal commitments coming that weekend. So, and then beyond that, you've got your key in-state guys. You've got, Jamarian Parker's not a key guy, not an in-state guy, but he is a key guy in this class, the running back. You've got Chase Lofton coming that weekend. You got Pierce Mooberry. You got Roman Ziebert. So, my guess is that if Christian Jones takes an official visit to Nebraska, my guess is they're going to try to get it that weekend. I think that according to Brian Munson, Jones is starting to set up those official visits. So, I would expect some kind of announcement. I do believe Nebraska will get one. And we'll see if they can get him on, June 21st. That's kind of their thing, get a lot of the in-state guys there. And Christian Jones about a year ago, he talked about Matt Rule's in-state recruiting and how that was, kind of attracting him to Nebraska. So I think that's going to be a smart play. And, that I definitely, I think by July, you're going to start rolling in some commitments, probably late June. Even I like the other visit weekend, Sean Hammerbeck, is coming for a visit. He got a project into the Huskers, 3-star tackle, but, a guy that they're fighting Kansas State for out of South Dakota. Those are the types of recruiting battles Nebraska needs to win against Kansas State, against Kansas. They need to beat Missouri, which is getting harder to do because, they're up in their NIL game. They're becoming a power in the SEC.
Throwing money around like nobody's business.
They are, and they're doing a great job.
Yeah,
I never thought that Missouri, would be like a top 10 program. And they've only done it for 1 year, but, I have to give Eli Drinkwitz a lot of credit. And I loved his, when they beat the crap out of Tennessee, and he's all, "We're standing on business, Josh." I thought that was hilarious. I still think about that. And I'm like, get things done to myself. I'm like, stand on business. I don't know. But that had to feel good, though, because Tennessee just smoked them. And I know as a football coach, I only coached middle school, but I had teams where, like, 1 year I got beat 50-0, and then the next year I got to do the same thing. Yeah. So what comes around goes around, as they say. But Jalen Williams, another guy back to the visits, June 21st. They're kind of seems like they're battling Michigan for him and Olaf Atuli. Douglas Utu's another guy. I'm sure they're going to try to get him on campus again. But Michael Riles is another guy I really like. 4-star edge out of Houston. Cade Patrizak. That's probably
no, that's how I pronounce it.
I like those big boys from the Dakotas, So we got Nash from South Dakota, and a few others, and so a lot of really good things there. I like where Nebraska sits with Chase Lofton, and I think Steve Wiltfong in his last update said he liked where Nebraska sits. So I feel much more confident about him than I do about like Christian Jones, and I am slightly worried about Jamarian Parker just because like some of these other Alabama and some of these other big schools have offered him, and Nebraska's offering some other running backs. So, but at the same time, schools will often do that to kind of put some pressure on kids too. Like, hey, if you're not going to commit, like we've got other options. So obviously he's still the top of their board. And, if I had a list of like 5 guys that I think Nebraska needs to land, Jamarian Parker, even though he's not highly ranked as some of them, I think he would be on that list for me.
Yeah. And, when you look at this 2025 class, there's already a solid base, 8 commitments headlined by TJ Lateef, of course. So who actually, while I'm on the subject of TJ Lateef, and then I'll finish my point, was invited to the Elite 11 finals in Los Angeles. So 3 Elite 11 quarterbacks in the room. I don't know. Well, Lateef is technically not in the room, but 3 Elite 11, Nebraska commits as part of the quarterback room, I guess you could say. That's pretty damn impressive. For a 5-7 team, that's pretty impressive.
No, it is really impressive. And TJ Lateef, that's the thing, is he's super talented. When you look at that list, I think I might have meant to post it on the Husker Big Red Facebook page, and I'm not sure if I actually did now, but it was just of everybody, all the schools that had teams at the Elite 11, and Nebraska's in that mix, and it's a pretty, you're with Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama. Michigan doesn't have an Elite 11 quarterback this year, and they're not the only big program that doesn't. So, I think that really shows that Matt Rule is doing some impressive things, and not just him, but Glenn Thomas. I mean, to
Yeah.
get 3 Elite 11 quarterbacks here within 2 years, that's just Brian Munson of Husker Online had a really good point in one of his write-ups about recruiting, and he talked about, if you can get your QB room right like that, I just, he was saying he believes, a lot of the other rooms will fall the right way if you get that QB room right, and he's correct on that. And Nebraska, that's one thing they did not do under, Mike Riley or under Scott Frost, and Matt Rule has corrected that. And it's been impressive, it just shows, last year he looked at the roster and it's like, we're a quarterback away, and so they've went and said, like, for the next 5 years we're going to be fine at quarterback with these guys. And so I'm really pleased with that and the competition and the way that they've developed them. And I'd love to. Matt Rule's like, I'm not afraid of the transfer portal. I'm going to tell these guys the truth. I'm going to be honest with these quarterbacks, and if they want to leave, that's their decision. But I'm not going to play patty cake and spare feelings or whatever. Like, I like that. And kids know where they stand. They're in practice every single day, so don't lie to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if you and I are practicing in a quarterback competition, who's going to know better than us who's winning? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So don't make it out. Don't lie to some kid to try to keep him there. They don't appreciate that. And I think Matt Rule's honesty, that's how we got Daniel Kalen. So, I think that's a great benefit for him moving forward.
When you look at Latif, just the way he throws the football, he's very quick in his reads. He's got a nice spiral. He's more of a pocket passing type of quarterback. He can run a little bit, but he just fits the style of where Nebraska is trying to go at the position. He can get the ball down the field quick, and he's a wide receiver's best friend. He doesn't really put any, in the highlights that I watched, he didn't really put any balls in a difficult place for the receivers to get. He kind of led his receivers to the football. So, I mean, I think he's just going to be another solid quarterback in the room. And, it's just really, really cool that, 3 Elite 11 quarterbacks, an Elite 11 quarterback this year. And, we kind of saw how the Elite 11, went for, Kalen last year, put him on a more national stage, and I believe helped him get his 4th star by that summer, according to some recruiting rankings. I believe it was 24/7 Sports.
Yeah. And yeah, Latif, I mean, he's it's like a flick of the wrist with him. He's really,
Yeah.
he's got, I mean, he's not Dylan Raiola arm
No.
talent, but he's very talented. And I think, I do think he's a little bit underrated, but, I probably say that about every Nebraska commitment, but the kid is super talented. I mean, he's a top 20 quarterback, and, I think he's going to be a spectacular fit. It's going to be really, he also has that mindset of being a competitor. So, he's not going to come in here and seed like Daniel Kalen being the quarterback of the future. So I think that's going to be a really fun competition. Hopefully they all stay and, start, and they can keep them all. I think that, that is starting to happen a little bit more, like Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama. Some of these teams kept all their quarterbacks. I think they're starting to realize that there's only so many jobs that are really, in the Power 5 that you want to take. So hopefully that'll be a good sign for Nebraska going forward. I do want to talk about baseball though, before we wrap things up. The first day of the Big Ten tournament was not good for Nebraska. It started Jackson Brockett on short rest, which was a tough situation for him to be in. And then Ohio State got hot. The offense did not do the Huskers any favors, and so they lost that first game, which is pretty detrimental in the Big Ten tournament, because now Nebraska's in a situation where they would have to win 5 in a row to win the Big Ten championship. They did start last night with Brett Sears. Was spectacular. He became the first Huskers pitcher since 1999 to go 9-0. Allowed 2 hits, 2 runs, 9 strikeouts. Retired his last 10 batters. So Nebraska is still alive. They'll play they'll play the loser of Ohio State and Indiana tomorrow at 2 p.m. And then if they win that game, I believe this is how the bracket works, but I believe they would have to play twice on Saturday. They'd have to beat whoever wins this game today out of Ohio State and Indiana. They would have to beat that team on Saturday twice in order to get to the Big Ten championship game. So it's going to be a long haul. I'm assuming that they're going to go with Mason McConaughey tomorrow. He's 3rd in the Big Ten in ERA, so I feel very good about that. I'm not sure what they're going to do if they get to Saturday, and I'm thinking maybe if they somehow get to Sunday, I don't know if they would trot out Brett Sears on 3 days rest. I'm really not sure, but if you have a shot for a Big Ten title, maybe. But that's where these tournaments get interesting, because you have guys that most college teams only have, kind of 3 true starters, their Friday, Saturday, Sunday starter. And so this really tests teams, and it will be interesting how it works out. But I do think they can get to Saturday. Can they get to Sunday? I'm not sure, but I do think they can get to Saturday.
Right now, it's all about continuing to build the resume for the NCAA tournament. Not that they need, a huge resume jump, but just, continued wins and things like that. I thought the bullpen did a really good job last night as well. The bullpen has been
Krista was great last
Yeah,
night.
absolutely. I believe at one point they said they retired, 15 of the last 16 batters or something like that. So
Yeah.
Krista was fantastic, and the bullpen has been used quite a bit over these past couple of days too. So it was really good to see them, have another, strong outing as well. And people were saying, why didn't you start, Brett Sears on Monday, right? Yeah, I'm getting my days mixed up.
Tuesday.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why, because you're not playing to lose, but you want your best pitcher in an elimination situation. And now, you have an opportunity to, live another day. So, I mean,
plus if you're in that, because then if you win that first game, then you've got Sears and McConaughey. You win those two games, and you're playing for the Big Ten championship. So, I mean, I understand very much what Will Bolt was doing. I thought maybe they would go with like a Will Walsh or somebody like that, or maybe even Drew Christo, just trying to get a few innings, through here or there. But Jackson Brockett, he tried to do his best, didn't work out, but. Yeah, I mean, I think they're still in a good position to make the tournament. I mean, according to Baseball of America, had their bracket projection yesterday. So this is before Nebraska even beat Purdue. And they were a number 2 seed in the same region as the number 5 overall seed, which is Arkansas. So, I mean, you could see them trending down a little bit. Like one of the projections had them in the same bracket as the number 10, the number 2 in the 10 seed bracket, in the 10 seed region, I should say. So, I mean, they're moving down a little bit. Because I mean, you'd rather be in the region with the number 10 seed as opposed to the number 5 overall seed. But at the same time, just as long as they make the tournament, I think is the big thing. And hopefully, the thing about it is, I do think that they have the pitching to make some noise because Sears and McConaughey they're as good as any pitchers in the Big Ten. So and Sears, I mean, I think he's been spectacular this year, and I feel like we can throw him out there against just about any team and he can get a victory. So I do think that Nebraska, with their offensive firepower too, can be dangerous in the NCAA tournament.
The Bats woke up last night, which,
yeah,
I mean, granted, they're allowed to have a bad game. When you lose 15-2, there's really not a lot of room for error. I'm not expecting them to score, 17 runs, but it was good to see them get a little bit more consistent production last night, and just enough to. Everything kind of fell into place last night. The pitching was much better. The Bats, did their part, and it was really good to see everybody bounce back.
And so the Huskers will play Friday at 2 p.m. Central Time. So I'm assuming that'll be McConaughey pitching, but maybe it'll be matchup dependent. Hopefully we get another shot, maybe at Ohio State. Either way, I don't think it really matters. It would be nice because Nebraska's going to have to beat, Ohio State to get to the championship round anyway. So it's really the Big Ten baseball bracket is kind of interesting if you check it out. So hopefully they'll be able to move on there, but that's kind of where it's at. And if they lose, I still think that they should be in a strong position to make the tournament. The last thing, it does seem like there's going to be some, basketball news at some point. There was a tweet yesterday. I can't remember who that was from, but
the Scarlet shoot around. I believe I'm going to get the name wrong, but
anyway, teasing that there could be some potential news coming from the basketball from the transfer portal. So I don't know if that's that kid from UCLA.
I would love it if that was that kid from UCLA.
Yeah, because he's a super talented kid. I'm trying to remember what
Scarlet Shoot Around podcast. I want to make sure I got your name right. So shout out to the guys over at the Scarlet Shoot Around podcast. And I can pronounce their name, but I unfortunately cannot pronounce the UCLA transfer's name. I'm going to have to learn that, hopefully.
So Berkey, I'm going to try it. Berkey Buyu Katunzel. I have no idea if that's correct, but at any rate, 6'9" forward, averaged 4.5 points for UCLA last year. I think he was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school, or maybe I'm trying to think back. This kid actually he's an international guy that kind of gained some traction at the end of like the last recruiting cycle. And I know that actually Michigan was fighting for this kid too. And UCLA ended up getting him. But he's going to transfer after 1 year. Played 26 games, had 8 starts as a freshman. let's see, didn't shoot the ball super well, but 43% from the field. But there's that freshman year is tough. I mean, people want to look at freshman year stats all the time, but there's a huge jump from year 1 to year 2, and especially on the offensive end, I feel like if you're being coached by Fred Hoiberg, and the Huskers definitely could use more size inside, another big guy and another talented international player that I think could
Yeah.
develop really well under Fred Hoiberg.
And honestly, I was watching some of his, tape from the FIBA U19 World Championships, and he's a total package. He doesn't necessarily make his living from beyond the arc. He's more of an inside post player type of guy, but he's not, limited to that. He can, expand his scoring range. He's not, solely somebody who scores in the paint. He's extremely talented. He can move well with the basketball. So I think he would be another really good fit for this system. And again, you look at the transfers that Nebraska basketball has gotten, and a lot of them have multiple years of eligibility. This guy was only a freshman last season, so that would give him time, should he commit, to grow with the program and kind of find that rare consistency, in terms of roster eligibility in the transfer portal. So I would love it if Nebraska landed him, and in my opinion, kind of different from Dirk's opinion over there. I think this was a successful offseason for Nebraska basketball, all things considered, and the sky is not falling. So
I mean, yeah, if Nebraska could have got Keisei Tominaga, an extra year. I mean, why didn't you do that, Fred? Why didn't you
come on,
figure out
Fred,
the
you're so
NCAA?
unprepared. You're so
Why-
unprepared, Fred.
Why
Fire
didn't you?
everybody.
Why didn't you fix Frank Mass' knee like with a magic wand so he didn't need off-season surgery? I mean, when you point out two things that Fred literally had no control over and saying that's why he had a bad offseason, that's kind of a bad take. But
And also kind of the fact that Jamarcus Lawrence went to URI. I mean,
yeah.
I loved him when he was here, but it's just like it seems like other programs, he's kind of reached his ceiling. So how much of a loss was that in comparison to what we brought in? Because think about it, what did we replace for Lawrence?
I'd say Raleigh Wooster, who, I mean,
yeah.
Lawrence never really, I mean, there's a reason that Keisei was basically playing point guard at the end of the year. They just didn't really trust Lawrence to do it. And he had some real turnover issues. And so, they got a true point guard and a guy that can actually play some defense. And then that's like, I know it's like crazy, but all the Nebraska fans in that Texas A&M game are like, oh, we need better defense. And they go out and get the big guy from Washington, who's literally one of the best rim protectors in the portal. Braxton Mee, and people are like freaking out about it. And it's like, what are you talking? That guy is a lot. Like, he's going to throw down so many dunks this year. He's going to dunk more than any Nebraska player we've had.
This guy's literally 7 feet. How can you be upset?
Plus, he's going to actually block some shots. Like, that guy's going to start next to the North Dakota State transfer. I'm blanking on
Andrew Morgan.
Yeah, Morgan. So that's probably going to be our front court. And then we're going to have Gary and Bryce Williams. And then it's going to be, I'm guessing, Raleigh Wooster. And then you're going to have the kid from Rutgers, Griffiths, and maybe Connor Esigian coming off the bench.
I love Connor Esigian off the bench. I mean, because he's one of those guys that could start if need be too. I mean,
yeah. And then so I think that's pretty much it. And then Sam Hoiberg, of course, is another guy. So I mean, I think that they've got a pretty solid rotation right now. They do need some more depth in the front court. There's no question about that, and that's where this UCLA guy would come in nicely. But I think in terms of their top 8, I mean, I think that they're pretty on par to where they were last year. I mean, they're not the same. They don't maybe have the offensive firepower, but they're going to be a lot better defensively. And the thing about it, too, is Fred Hoiberg can coach these guys to play offense. So, like Gavin Griffiths, Connor Esigian, like he's going to get the most out of these dudes. I guarantee it.
And we saw how much defense ruled the day in the Big Ten and how you needed to be physical in order to win in the Big Ten. And, I loved Josiah Alik. He really played well and he played at a high level. So I'm not trying to diss him at all. But at the same time, there were times when I thought, he was just a little undersized in terms of rebounding, and maybe he didn't have the physical, the physicality not needed to play in the Big Ten, but on a night-to-night basis, if you needed somebody to just, elbow somebody in the paint or something like that, or, go hard up for a rebound, I just didn't think that, he could do that at times. So now, we kind of have that physical element as well, and I'm not sure if we're better or worse off than last year, but I do like where we stand right now. And say the UCLA forward commits, how many roster spots do we have? Should he commit? Are we full? No.
I don't think so. I think there's 2 roster spots available. I'm not 100% sure on that. I have to look at the scholarship chart, but I think we have 2 spots available. So yeah, that would be a nice pickup. And I think at the very least, because like Gavin Griffiths is a guy too. I mean, he's like a top 50 recruit. Keisei Tominaga came here as basically a no-star recruit, which is partially, international stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, Fred Hoiberg took that guy and made him into, a superstar. Not Fred Hoiberg didn't do it himself, but I mean, he certainly helped. And I think he's definitely going to help with Gavin Griffiths and Asijan. And he's just a great offensive coach, and the defensive side, I think, is going to be helped just with those players. And overall, I think Fred can get, I don't think that scoring points is going to be an issue for Nebraska ever under Fred Hoiberg. So if they get things better on the defensive end and, more rim protection, I think that's going to make a big difference. And yeah, it hurts losing Rienk Mast, but at least we'll get him back next year. So, and looks like his surgery went well and he's on the path to recovery. So
that'll be another tool in the chest for next year. And then, I think with the way that Fred has shown that he can recruit and, things like that, I think the Nebraska basketball program is in a good place long-term for the first time in a long time.
That is very true. And with that, we'll wrap it up, you guys. So I'm going to be on site at a track meet here in Montana this weekend. So we won't have our chat on Saturday. We'll be back on Monday. I will get a chance to check out Nebraska signee Quinn Clark. So might try to corral him for a little talk, maybe ask him about Dylan Raiola a little bit or whatever. But at any rate, we'll be back on Monday with the podcast, you guys. So if you haven't, please hit the like button, get into the comment section, subscribe to the podcast, and please check out HuskerBigRed.com too. We have a lot of great information there, when we're not on the podcast. So that's probably our first priority. This is kind of a secondary thing. So if you like the podcast,
we're much better at writing.
Yeah, we definitely don't mispronounce as many names when we write them. So, so check out HuskerBigRed.com. Have a great day. And as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.